Welcome to Becoming Secure in Love, from push and pull to peace of mind, with me, Love Coach Mariya. On this show, you'll receive tools for relational health that you can apply wherever you are on your journey in love. You'll learn how to anchor your security within you so you can co-create balanced, interdependent relationships that fill your cup. Let's get the love flowing. Becoming Secure in Love starts now. Hello, I'm Love Coach Mariya, and you're listening to Becoming Secure in Love on transformationtalkradio.com. Stick with me for the next hour, and you'll learn how to touch your own heart. In every episode of this show, we examine the challenges that love can present and explore the various ways to shift from push and pull to peace of mind. The topic of this episode is emotional release. You've got to feel to heal. And I have emotional release coach, Claire Weber, here to discuss it with me. Claire has been intimately connected to big emotions her whole life. Her first conscious memory was seeing her mom drown when she was just 3 years old. Grief in all of its forms has been a lifelong companion for her and led her to learn how to adapt and ultimately thrive from her experiences of grief. She has studied in the world's most genius grief leaders, including Hope Edelman and Regina Thomashauer, and absorbed their teachings to create a whole new relationship to grief and intense emotions. In her years of learning and experience, she now sees the beauty in grief and the full emotional range, and is here to hold the lantern out ahead for you in your emotional release. She teaches 1-hour emotional release classes, and emotional release class is a movement ritual to clear out the emotional gunk so you can claim your internal power and sensual life force energy. People are invited to come with all their heaviness, frustration, confusion, despair, and anger. Participants are encouraged to make noise, stomp on the ground, get messy, writhe and roll on the floor, throw pillows, snap dish towels, and lots of other prompts that give a chance to express emotions in a new and highly permissive way. Claire, I'm delighted to be having this conversation with you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Mariya. It is such a pleasure to be here. I love the work that you're up to in the world, and I'm just really excited to dialogue with you tonight to see how the things that we're doing both relate to each other and coincide. Thank you for inviting me here tonight.
Absolutely. Thanks for coming. So what would you like to add to the realm of emotional release and the practice of it?
I'd like to add that this is for everyone. This is for everyone. This is usually when I talk about grief, people say like, oh, I'm not grieving right now, or I'm over that grief, or I'm fine. We're all grieving. Life is a process of grieving, and grief is just one of the, heavier emotions on the emotional scale that we can experience. So emotional release really is for everyone. It's for women, it's for men, it's for people who just got served with divorce papers, and it's with people who don't even remember why, they had their last heartache, but it's there somewhere. So we all have emotions that are stored in the body, and very few of us, especially in Western culture, have ever been taught how to interact with them in a healthy way. So just add, it's for everybody. Life is a process of experiencing our full emotional range. And the more full that we can experience, the more our emotional wellness will be present, the more vital we will be, the more radiant we will be. I would also like to add that I like the concept of emotional hygiene, that we have a lot of hygiene practices that we do to care for our wellness, our physical wellness. We have a lot of them. We brush our teeth, we floss, the things that we do. We have our regular medical exams. And what are we doing for our emotions to keep up with the hygiene around our emotions? So that's really what the emotional release is. It's about having that clearing of those emotions from the body so that we can continue to maintain our health. We don't have to wait until there's a crisis. It's like we don't wait until there's a massive cavity to go to the dentist or to brush our teeth. We take care of it day by day by day by day so that things don't build up. It's the exact same thing with our emotions.
Wonderful. That totally makes sense. And I think, sadly, I think a lot of people don't like perceive the energetic nature of emotions. Like they're energetically charged. They have those frequencies, you know. I like to say that emotions are two parts. There are thoughts and stories in the mind, and then feelings in the body. And I think, you know, being able to separate those a little bit, or to just like see that those are the two parts of it. You can see how just because you might maybe think your way through something, if you haven't moved it through the body, like it's still there. Like you have to process it mentally and physically in order to like help it through.
Yes, absolutely. It's well said. You know, emotions leave a residue in the body. And so if we may attend to the thinking part of the emotions, the stories that we construct and that we can put labels to and those sorts of things, of course, there's a way to work with those with talk therapy and things like that. And they also leave this residue in the body that's why you might have an experience where there's suddenly just so much tension in the body, or just like this feeling you just want to like hit something and you may not even know why. And that's because there's a signature of these emotions that over time that build up in the body, so that even if, you know, sometimes like a child may not even know what they're upset about, but they're upset. And it happens to us as adults too. And I think we talked about, you know, somebody I admire deeply, Bessel van der Kolk wrote, The Body Keeps the Score. And it's all about him, among many others, have recorded literally the biology of what happens as we go through this emotional life, and the scars that the body is just, it's the ultimate accountant. It's constantly keeping the ledger, you know, a little anger here, a little sadness here, a little rage here. It's keeping it all in the body. And so, again, most of us were never taught to learn how to work with that. Now, this is not the only way to work with it. Of course, that's what, you know, a big part of yoga is about this. Certain types of exercises. There are many ways of working with this. This just happens to be the one that has resonated with me the most, particularly around grief. And I think that is truly extremely accessible. And it's the one, honestly, that I've had the most feedback from the widest range of people, including men and women, ages and stages of life, that say like, wow, these are people who would never get on a yoga mat. These are people who, you know, think that breathing techniques are too new agey, but you give them some props to throw at the wall and some really crazy music and they're all in. So I think it's all about meeting people with wherever they are and something that they can resonate with and really say like, okay, this is for me. I happen to work with a lot of executives, founders, CEOs. I'm also a business coach. And what I was finding was that there was so much that I was experiencing with my clients that was so obvious to me was the result of this like years upon years of encrusted emotional residue that had never been addressed. And what I found is, as a business coach, as I'm sitting there with them face to face, we could work with some of this. And of course, you know, I had techniques to work with their emotions and things like that. But finally, I was like, I've got to bring this work together. And that's where my work is really now evolving. I have a program called Executive Emotions, where I take these clients that I know very well in the business context, and I know the things that they're dealing with, the heavy emotions of the pressure of raising funds, the pressure of reporting to shareholders, the pressures of employees always asking them, the pressure of being at the top and not having anyone to lean on. And so that work, I've now created private emotional release sessions just for them. And what I'm seeing with that is, the accessibility. Like I said, these are people, they're not going to get on a yoga mat probably for whatever reason. They have blocks around, no, I'm really not interested. All that's woo woo, all these other things. But when I present this to them, like, hey, we're basically going to go in a room, we're going to play some music really loud. I'm going to give you some stuff to throw. You're going to have permission to cry. You're going to scream if you want to. And it's a really safe context for them. It's a total game changer. They go into this process and they come out and they're like, I didn't even know. And that's what I hear a lot of people say, particularly men. I didn't even know. I didn't even know.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And yet their employees are telling me that they're raging. There's problems at home. Like this, the signs are all around.
Right.
But they didn't know. So that's
Right.
another important piece of this work, is that it helps people to release things that they honestly didn't even know were there.
And you find pretty consistently that there's a lot of stuff in almost anyone, even if you don't really think it's bottled up, it's leaking out somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And some people that I work with are more emotionally attuned than others, right?
Sure.
Some people have been doing some form of work for a while and they're like, yeah, I know there's something in there, or had a big grief in childhood and I know there's always more to release, or, so there's some people who are more attuned and they know there's something there. But then I have the really brave ones who are like, well, I'm going to try it. I don't really know what this is, but I'm willing to give it a try and I'll jump in. And those are usually the people that are just completely shocked. It's like they just took out the garbage and they didn't even know that it was overflowing,
Right.
And so recently had someone tell me that after his first class, like he had such a massive shift. He had no idea how completely blocked off he was to his emotions. And I spoke to him recently, this was now months ago, and he said like it like opened a door that I didn't even know was closed, and now I can't get it to stop. So like his emotions are flowing. He has access to his emotions that he didn't even know. He didn't even know how blocked off they were. So it's a really fun experiment for brave people who are willing to jump in and try it, to find out what's there.
That's so cool. You have a wonderful definition of grief that I really appreciated, but I'm going to go to a short break and ask you to elaborate on that when we come back. You are listening to Becoming Secure in Love, from Push and Pull to Peace of Mind, with me, Love Coach Mariya, and my dog, and my guest, emotional release coach, Claire Weber. We've been discussing how emotions get bottled, ways that we can release them, and find gunk we didn't even know is stored in our bodies. When we come back, we'll explore how grief can show up in more ways than we tend to think. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Becoming Secure in Love, from Push and Pull to Peace of Mind, with me, Love Coach Mariya. You can find me online at lovecoachmariya.com. And my guest today is Claire Weber, emotional release coach. If folks want to learn more or get in touch with you, Claire, what's the best way?
The best way is just to drop me an email. My email address is cfontainw@gmail.com. That's cfontainEW@gmail.com.
Wonderful. Thank you. Before the break, we were discussing how emotions leave residue in our body and how we can do certain things to help, just get them out of our bodies, just, throwing things, screaming, crying, doing whatever the body tells us it needs to help release those emotional charges. And we were just about to explore some of the depth and breadth of grief. Claire, I don't remember where I heard or read something that you, I think, had posted about grief, and it was just a lovely, it felt really all encompassing. It felt like something, I don't know, it really resonated. And if you could share more about how you define grief.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best definition I've ever heard is grief is a loss of possibility.
Mm,
And when you think of it from that perspective, it really does touch us all and touches us every day.
mhm,
And it touches us in a lot of different ways. And so, grief generally in our society gets labeled as like, oh, somebody just died, you just broke up, you lost your dog, something very concrete and very specific. But if you think about what all those things have in common that causes the pain and the distress, it is the loss of possibility. I just lost my spouse. We're not going to see the grandkids graduate from high school. We're not going to take that cruise to Norway that we'd always talked about. I'm not going to see them tomorrow morning making coffee like I have for the past 30 years. It's all of those possibilities that are now gone. That is at the root of it, the pain, the distress. Um, a breakup, like those sorts of things, like we're never going to get married or whatever. So at the core, grief really does always come down to that. Like, what is the possibility that no longer exists? And I like that one too, because it covers everything. It also covers disenfranchised grief, which is grief that is not recognized. It's
mm,
grief that comes from infertility, the grief over a baby that never was,
mhm.
um, which can be a disenfranchised grief. It's not seen as a quote loss. So if we narrow the lens of grief to like losing something that you had, it leaves out an entire panacea of constant grief that
Mhm,
humans are experiencing. The grief of aging,
mhm.
all of the possibilities that are lost day by day, year by year, that we continue on this planet, the loss of becoming the first astronaut or whatever, the childhood dreams, the losses along the way, the losses of our health, the way we're never going to hike and climb Mount Kilimanjaro, or all of these things. So the loss of possibility really, truly covers it all.
Yep,
And from that perspective, we're all grieving almost constantly.
yep, absolutely. Um, yeah, I don't know how to put my finger on it, but there's just something that feels very comforting and validating to like hear that. And I suppose it's a bit strange to be like, oh, look at all the ways I'm grieving I didn't realize. But
Yeah.
it's nice to be able to name things in general. And
Mhm.
I think to recognize too that we are grieving things, like, gosh, there is like some sadness to those types of possibilities that have been lost along the way that I hadn't really
Mhm.
thought of because it doesn't fit in that category. And in fact, in a lot of ways, they don't really fit in any other category. And so having that more narrow definition of grief, all of these things just kind of get completely unattended to.
Yeah, that's
Um,
right.
and it feels also a lot, I feel more empathy also in expanding that definition of grief and realizing that not only am I grieving so many things, everyone around me is too. Like we're all carrying grief around.
Absolutely. And you said it gives a name for something. It gives an understanding for something you may not have words for. And I think,
Mhm.
that's that disenfranchised part,
Mhm.
that when we don't know what it is or give it really its appropriate sort of weight, we can think that we're going crazy or just dismiss it or go and eat a dozen donuts over it, or like never know what to do with it, right? Like, to find the right solution, we have to know what the problem is. And grief is not a problem, but you know what I'm saying, that
Yeah.
like, and so you use the word untended, and that is what happens. This grief goes untended, and untended grief is very powerful. And untended grief requires a lot of energy to maintain itself.
Hmm.
And trying to um, trying to avoid grief is like trying to keep a beach ball underwater. It requires a lot of energy to keep it away, to push it down. So if we don't even know that that's what it is, much less than how to work with it specifically, it just causes just like erosion in our physical, mental, spiritual body. And what it can look like, this is what I get asked like a lot, like, well, how do I know if that's what it is for me? Well, it can look a lot of ways. If you're experiencing anything like, constant fatigue without really knowing why, I mean, a host of things that I believe are completely traceable to untended grief. Depression, like depressing is like to literally push down. Like that's what I always encourage people to look first. Like, is there untended grief in your life? If you're experiencing depression, is there untended grief? What does that mean? Well, let's look at it. But you know what? We don't have to talk about it, because let's try a 1-hour emotional release class. And not only will it show you everything you need to know, it's also going to help address it. So that's the power of this work, is it doesn't require people to even understand, to know, or to label something for what it is. It allows the processing of things without the conscious understanding of it. So that's why I love this work so much, is because my theory in observing life for so long now is that really we are all walking around with massive loads of untended grief that needs to be released through the body.
I was just reading about something I had heard elsewhere, and apparently there is actually neuroscience backing to it. So the way that like the physiological cycle of an emotion is there's a stimulus, and then the body, recognizes it and sends an alert to the brain, and the brain pulls up the story and then dumps chemicals into the body. And then we feel that, as usually like anxiety or excitement. And then if we continue to spin up the story and spin out on the story, we can spend hours or weeks or months, going round and round about this thing. But if you drop the story and get into your body, the physiological lifespan of an emotion is roughly 90 seconds. And like, if you just check with your body, like, what do you need, body? And if it's like, I think I just need to cry, and you just cry it out and just like let your body sob, like you'll feel like the pressure will like pass after like a minute or so.
Right.
And it's just like, that's how powerful the body is with the emotions. And like you said, when we stack those up and never deal with them or release them, they'll just hang out there, just waiting to just get let go.
It's true. It's so true. And like, who taught you that, right? You had to become a seeking, self-educating adult to go out and get that piece of information. Who taught you that? Who taught you that, like, if you can interrupt an emotional story and give it 90 seconds to flood through your body will handle it and discharge it, right? Like, who taught you that? Who taught you some of the simple things that animals know to do, that when they've been in like a fight or flight, they shake it off.
Shake it off. I taught my dog to do that when she gets stressed out.
Exactly. Yep. I did too. The same thing, then they like, but nobody teaches us these things. And
but we learned about trigonometry because that was really important.
We got to learn all those important things, right? Like, but don't teach me to balance a checkbook or handle my emotions. Like, so, I think there are signs of hope with social emotional learning and things like this coming into the classroom. It is my great hope that we are doing a better job of educating children about how to manage their emotions. And yeah, there's still a gap for us because we didn't learn that. So there's a whole generation of us that really need to learn this so that we can help shepherd the next generation into managing their emotions, because they don't have to rule us. And they do, because we don't know how to work with them. We don't know simple ways to work with them.
And it's amazing, like, how accessible the tools are. They're just, they're, I guess when I say accessible, I mean to say that like, once you have them, it's like, oh yes, I can do this. But yeah, no, you have to go. They're not easy to find. They're not prevalent.
Yeah, when I teach my emotional release classes, people at the end are like, well, that was like really simple. I'm like, yeah, you can totally do this at home. It's really not that complicated. What I just taught you, it's like really, really simple. And yet, like I felt the same way when I discovered a lot of these techniques with the teachers I've worked with, like, well, that's really not that complicated. But I just paid you a ton of money, but it's paid off, it's weight in
Sure.
gold because
Right.
I didn't know that. I
Yeah.
wouldn't have thought of that. And years later, I do them almost every day, and they've
Yeah.
changed my life and they've become my vocation. And so it really is simple. It really is simple. It's as
Yes.
simple as brushing your teeth. But I think there are a lot of boogeymen that stand at the door for most of us that keep us from passing through. And like,
Well, and that's why I was just going to say they're simple, but there's definitely a lot of value in having community, having someone like, relatively skilled, holding an energetic container that's safe and sound. And
absolutely.
it's just like, going to a gym helps. It's like there's super simple exercises you can do at home. You don't have to go to a gym to do it. But who has the like motivation, like the
Yeah.
self-discipline? Like that's why we go to gyms, because it helps us be accountable. It helps us feel like we're in a space of other people motivating us to do, because it's hard. It's simple, but it's hard.
Yeah.
And that's why I think that what you're doing is so wonderful. And we are going to take another break, and I want to hear more about your Grieve and Glow program.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you are listening to Becoming Secure in Love, from Push and Pull to Peace of Mind, with me, Love Coach Mariya, and my guest, emotional release coach Claire Weber. We've been discussing, emotions and how they hang out in our body, and how grief is something we all carry every day. It builds up and can flow through us with a little bit of practice. And when we come back, we'll explore at least one wonderful way to have some community and support around developing these kind of practices for regular emotional hygiene. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Becoming Secure in Love, from Push and Pull to Peace of Mind, with me, Love Coach Mariya. Again, you can find me online at lovecoach mariya.com. And my guest today is Claire Weber, emotional release coach. You have an event coming up, right, Claire? Can you tell us about that?
Yes, we are, with my business partner, Sarah Chiswick, and we are running our 4th session of a program called Grieve and Glow. We have our wait list open currently for the program that's launching in January. And this is an 8-week online, it's live, but it's online. We reach people around the world program where we really dig into the grief, the heavy side of that particular emotion, and come out with the glow. So we haven't talked much about that. Like, okay, what is the other side of this, and why would people really want to go into this? Especially when you say grief, people are like, oh my gosh, I'll never stop
Sign me up.
crying.
Right.
Like, this
Yeah.
sounds so fun. Great marketing here. Everybody's, but really what people are so compelled by, again, this is our 4th time to do it, and the results we've had are just amazing. And it's really about recognizing that, the law of opposites, where there's a lot of darkness and heaviness, there's also to be found a lot of light. And that has been our personal experience. She and I both lost a parent really young. I lost my mom when I was 3, and she lost her dad when she was 4. So we both grew up in the shadows of grief and didn't really have all of the support growing up to have a healthy kind of evolution through that. So we found ourselves as adults having to do that work of untended childhood grief. And separately, we were on our paths of doing that work. I've been working on this for over 20 years, very actively, this grief journey. And so we met up at a certain point and realized we were both doing this work and really moved by it. And we had similar teachers. So we now joint teach this. This was originally her creation. She was definitely the mastermind behind this, but then I joined up with her, and we've evolved to work together. And we really are showing people and teaching people the things that we've learned on this journey through grief, that this really can be your greatest teacher. that it can be the thing that takes you into the depths, but it also helps you to find your light.
Mm.
And so Grieve and Glow is a very expanded version of emotional release. Emotional release is contained within that. So we do teach the emotional release process where we have people. It is currently right now just for women. This next session, we are going to be opening it up to men. But what we do is we take women deep into their own personal grief. They come to us with all different grief stories. For some, it is that disenfranchised, unnamed grief. I don't really know what it is, but I'm so depressed and I just really don't know what it is. I need help moving through it. Or I just lost a child 3 years ago and I just still haven't really been able to go there. I haven't had enough support to be able to even go into the depths of my grief. So we have people with all different kind of grief stories that come to us. But the process is the same, that we hold their grief. We literally have them embody their grief. We have them come as the Queen of Darkness on one of our first or second calls. So we have them literally like, what does your grief look like? Like, show us, black makeup, whatever you want to do, come embodied as your grief. So what we're doing there is we are taking the stigma and the sort of taboo-ness of grief away by saying, show it to us, bring it to us, give us more, let us see you, let us hear you howl, let us see you crawl on the floor, literally. We walk them for a very specific process to get them to learn all these different techniques. But the thing that happens with grief, in addition to the pain and the isolation of it, is the what's the word I'm looking for? The way it's not seen, the way becomes invisible. Most people don't pick up their iPhone and start doing a Facebook Live when they're crying on the middle of the floor in the middle of the night, right?
Mm-hmm.
We don't see a lot of TikToks about people like, snotting in their couch because they can't stop crying, or throwing things at the wall because they're so angry. We don't see a lot of that. We don't allow ourselves to be seen in the heavy emotions.
Well, there's a lot of stigma around it too. Like, I think part of the reason we hide that stuff is shame, which then compounds it even further.
Exactly. So that's what Grieve and Glow is about. It's about grief is heavy and hard enough to move through.
Mm-hmm.
And if you bring the light, the witness, of the community that we create of other people,
mm-hmm.
where we teach them how to interact with each other in a supportive and loving way, to say I see you, I feel you. A lot of the heavy emotions, especially around grief, we get messages like it's too much, you're really kind of inconvenient for me, you're making me very uncomfortable, so if you could just kind of go over there and do your thing. So what happens is people stuff it down because it's too much and they don't know what to do with it. They hide in the corners in their shame, covering over the already difficult emotions, which further compresses the grief, which further sends it into the body. So in this process, we say, we are your loving witnesses. We're going to see you in this grief. We're going to witness you in this grief. And that was the last piece I really wanted to add about emotional release. You were talking earlier about, needing to come and have a skilled facilitator, how that really helps. That's also the secondary piece that people are learning in this work, to allow themselves to be seen and to be witnessed in the heavy emotions. Mm. This is the game-changing piece. That's why, yes, can you do some of this work alone? Yes, you can. And I make sure people have sort of an emotional hygiene routine that they can do alone. Mm-hmm. And the real power, the real transformation comes in allowing themselves to be seen, to have that shame lifted, to feel what it feels like to be in the depths of their most vulnerable emotional expression and release, and to have someone holding that beautiful space. And not only just holding it for them, but saying, give me more, show me more of that. You are so beautiful when you're sobbing. You are so hot when you are raging. So really, truly having that presence. And that's what Sarah and I bring. We have such a fun and playful way of working with grief. That brings me to the last piece. Why do we call it Grieve and Glow? It's because we actually bring sensuality into the grieving process. So this is where, the being witnessed, having sensuality threaded into the dark and heavy emotions is something she and I have never witnessed. We've had such a powerful experience with it. We've co-created this amazing way of doing this. We do in-person retreats as well. But like I said, the next opportunity to work with us is online starting in January. It's super fun. The results that we see people having, they say things like, I literally did not know that I could be turned on in my grief, that I could feel like my vital life force by going into the depths of this darkness. So there's a whole very, very safe and structured way that we walk people through this. But ultimately, by our last class, people are dancing, having the time of their lives, saying I had no idea this would bring me here. So it's extremely powerful.
That's amazing. Emotionality is like a bank. We have a bank of emotions. And if you are blocking, you can't block one without blocking all of them.
Right.
So if you're blocking yourself from your grief, you're blocking yourself from your joy too.
Absolutely. And many people have the experience that when there's blocked grief or other heavy emotions, they're blocked from their sensuality, which is their sensual experience of life. So this could look like shut down sexually. This could look like loss of appetite. This could look like our senses. Our senses get blocked.
Wow.
So this helps return people to their sensual nature.
Turn the colors back up on life.
Exactly.
Wow. That's awesome. I provide something less intense, but more maintenance kind of hygiene stuff in essentially like a virtual ashram. And it's very, I think mostly like tools for DIY hygiene and stuff, but then it's got that container where you're with other people, you're being seen as you're processing things, and you're being supported by me as a facilitator, kind of like how in a yoga class, someone might come in and just gently adjust to keep you aligned. I'm just there to keep everybody aligned, with the frequency of love, and helping women develop tools for, frankly, empowering their compassion, which is
beautiful.
One of my big missions, I think. Beautiful. We're going to take another break though. And when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about empowering compassion and opening ourselves up to life. You are listening to Becoming Secure in Love, from push and pull to peace of mind, with me, love coach Mariya, and my guest, emotional release coach Claire Weber. And stay tuned for more. Welcome back to Becoming Secure in Love, from push and pull to peace of mind, with me, love coach Mariya. You can find me online at lovecoach.mariya.com. And my guest today is Claire Weber, emotional release coach. If folks want to get connected with you, Claire, will you tell us again the best way to find you?
Yeah, just drop me an email at cfontainew@gmail.com. That's CFONTAINEW@gmail.com.
Wonderful, thanks. Before the last break, we were talking about, I lose track, but grieving and glowing. Yeah, yes. Getting to, just unlocking the grief so you can access all of your emotions and all of your senses again, and turn the colors back on in life. And I was explaining a little bit about a space I run. It's sort of like a virtual ashram. I call my practice my peaceful power practice. And so I've just fashioned that into a container that I facilitate for others. And I think that sort of containment is helpful because I think it's important I call it kissing the dragons within us. We have these, monsters that lurk in our shadows, and as we go in there to find them and reconnect with them, I think that they're, I guess I kind of take for granted that there can be some detrimental ways to go about it. And it can be really helpful to have the proper skills for, interacting with essentially like unconscious parts of you that you're not very familiar with for various reasons. And I know you wanted to add something about, bringing a level of safety into the practice.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So this is one thing I love about the style of emotional release that I teach, is that there's a lot of built-in safety to it. And so, I was saying earlier, like, yes, you can do this at home, etc. For sure. There's nothing magical about the specific tools and the way that I'm teaching. But what is important, and that I find this work is so well suited towards, is that there's a titration of this emotional release, meaning like this is not primal scream therapy. This is not just go in and just like go crazy like it's a rage room and just throw and hit the wall. This is about sort of weighed and measured release of heavy emotions. And when there are things that have been there forever, there can be so much. And this process that I lead people through is both in my emotional release classes and with Grieve and Glow, is that we teach people how to relate to these really heavy, really intense emotions with safety while releasing them. This is the reason for some of the props that we use. So we use, say, dish towel to snap against the wall. Well, this is instead of like, hey, go release your emotions somewhere, just put on some angry music and just go nuts. I mean, people could be hitting the wall, they could be throwing themselves at a window, they could be doing things that could be very, very dangerous, right? When we've been suppressing things for so long and we have an opportunity to just like let it all go. That's not what this is. This is a very contained and very guided way to let people have access to the full power of their emotions and to have the full cathartic sort of release of them, but in very safe ways. So the kind of impact, like return on investment that you can get from snapping a dish towel at the wall to some really intense music versus like banging on the wall or screaming at the top of your lungs, those can be very detrimental things. And so that's why you'll hear a lot of people saying like, oh, it's not good to just go and like release your emotions. It can cause more damage. Yes, if it's done in an unstructured, uncontained, unsafe way, it's not very helpful. But in my classes, I'll play a little bit of music, I'll be giving the cues, and then I'll stop and have people check in with themselves. I'm watching the room, I'm checking in with them. And same in Grieve and Glow, we're teaching little bits of tools, we're releasing a little bit at a time. But also, this is the final thing, and what's different and very important about this work is about the way that we end. We end with infusing sensuality. We end with people, literally, when people leave my emotional release classes, I always have a hot beverage at the end because people are feeling so great. They don't want to go home. They're feeling very connected. They want to talk. And so every single one of my classes, I have them intentionally in the space where we can sit and have those drinks together, because I leave people, they're on a high. They've turned into their sensual body. I always end the class with dance music. People have a dance party. They have that human connection after. Same in our Grieve and Glow course. It's so important that people don't just go and rage and release their emotions and then walk out. It has to be done in a very contained way, and that energy has to be sealed. There's always more to find. You can always come back and do a little bit. You don't have to release an entire, 37 years of compacted childhood trauma and grief in one session. It's
Right.
too much. It
Right.
damages the nervous system.
Right.
But this is a way of a very titrated and very energetically sealed way to work with emotional release.
Perfect. Thank you for adding that. Yeah. I think, one of the problems too, like two big dangers that came to mind when you're explaining that is, physical danger, like you'll punch a wall, like you might break some bones in your hand. You might also, like the other danger I see is essentially just kind of because there's a constant feedback loop between the brain and the body. And so when you're activating the emotions through your body, it can activate those stories and the ego can take over, and that rage can like lead to like doing harm to yourself or others. Or even, if it's sadness or depression, like you can really spiral down into those stories if you don't have someone kind of like, you got to have, it's like if you're spelunking into caves, you want to have somebody on the other end of your rope, to pull you back. So it's definitely good to have a spotter on these things, and someone who can do emotional containment for sure.
Definitely. And I wanted to say that for your listeners, I am offering a complimentary ticket to my next virtual emotional release event. So I do them in person here in Austin, Texas. If you're visiting Austin, look me up, but also I do them. I'm going to have one coming up in mid-December, right around the holidays, where there's a lot of grief and heavy emotions that come up. So I'd love to invite your listeners to join me.
Thank you very much. We're going to wrap things up here. I wanted to add just a quote that I read from Pema Chodron actually today. She says, if your everyday practice is to open to all your emotions, to all the people you meet, to all the situations you encounter without closing down, trusting that you can do that, then that will take you as far as you can go. And then you'll understand all the teachings that anyone has ever taught.
Whew.
That's a mission. So this has been such a delight. And I really appreciate you joining me today, Claire. Learn more. I want to add, you shared this with me. For our listeners, you can learn more about these Grieve and Glow courses. If you actually just Google Grieve and Glow and then click the link with her coaching partner, Sarah Chisek, you'll find a bunch of information there too. As a reminder, I can be found at Love Coach Mariya, spelled MARIYA.com. I lead a free online community for women navigating the challenges of insecure relationships in the Facebook group Empowered Compassion, and also off social at empoweredcompassion.community. I facilitate that virtual ashram for women working to build the foundations of an authentically aligned life and a balanced interdependent relationship, and that's called Peaceful Power Practice. You can ask me about enrollment. My email is connect@lovecoachmariya.com, and I'm always available for one-on-one coaching as well. So with that, my friends, I bring this journey to its conclusion. Thank you all for joining me, and thank you, Claire, for sharing yourself with us and unpacking these heart-centered topics today. On the next episode, I'll be delving into self-expression with my friend Michelle Ouellette, and I look forward to unpacking that with you all. I'm Love Coach Mariya, and you are loved. Thank you for listening to Becoming Secure in Love, from push and pull to peace of mind, with me, Love Coach Mariya. Tune in every second and fourth Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com for an ample set of practical tools that will help you develop internally rooted security, the foundation of a balanced, interdependent relationship. You'll also learn how to empower your compassion, which will alchemize the soul and transform any relationship. Learn more at lovecoachmariya.com. That's lovecoach, MARIYA.com.